I'm Suzie Mackie, and I'm from Gardner Mines, Nova Scotia, a little town in between. Nobody usually knows where Gardner Mines is. It's kind of a little town in between Glace Bay and Sydney, Nova Scotia. Um, I have two children. They are one soon to be 14, the other is 17. I live with my partner in crime and best friend, David, as well. Um, and sometimes for me, it's hard to know where to start my story, I guess. But where I'm going to start today, because I feel like I feel everything we've done and we've been through in life forms who we are today, and the direction that we go in. So for me, I guess I feel it's important because it was, a huge event in my journey, that kind of led me to where I am. And that is when I was 28, I became a widow. Um, and I'm not sure why I'm so emotional right now. It's been 11 years. Um, and I guess my husband did have cancer. Um, and I feel that that's, and obviously that's kind of a monumental event. We truly journeyed through that together. I was his caretaker. And he stayed at home until he passed. So for me, after that, it was, my life very much became solely about my children. And I felt that was important at the time. They needed me at home, and I was able to do that, and that's what I did. So, kind of fast forward to now, and like I said, 17, one who's going to graduate, and the other soon to, and I started to go through the process of, who am I? Because I lost me a long time ago. As much as, like I said, part of me is being a mom, but I lost the individual part of me. So I had kind of been searching as to what was out there for me. And after my husband had passed, for a long time, I felt like, what is my purpose now? I felt like through that journey, I had something to offer other people in similar situations, or people struggling as caregivers. So that kind of has brought me to where I am now. And I run an all-natural supplement company through a larger company, which helps people mind and body. And I've done gut health. I've studied gut health, stress strategy and mindset. So along with my supplement business, I'm in the infant stages of developing my coaching business to help caregivers through their journey, whatever that looks like, and to help through, if sometimes when we get to the grief journey on the other side, to also help them navigate through that. And like I said, I don't want to be defined either by the fact that, I was a widow at 28. And I guess that's part of my message too for other people is it's, you really struggle through, and me telling someone that finding love again is okay. You need to find that on your own. But I truly believe that my late husband sent my current partner to me because he had told me before he passed that he never wanted me to be alone. So I heard a saying once that said sometimes it's like we grow a second heart. Um, and I believe that. I believe that we can love two people equally, just differently. My youngest was 2 turning 3, and my oldest was 5 turning 6. So my youngest, it was more in because he really still couldn't really vocalize. Um, and he couldn't really understand what had happened. So I found for him, we just went through a lot of with me, he went through a lot of separation anxiety, where he didn't want me to leave the house because then he was afraid because he didn't understand why his dad didn't come back. My older, for him, because they're at that age, they're so center focused that it's all about them. So I found there was a lot of going through that it wasn't his fault, that there wasn't something that he did that was bad that caused his dad to die. As much as we were very open with the words in terms of cancer and all those things, so that he didn't ever feel like he didn't understand what we were talking about. We at least used the words so he knew what they were. And that was through a lot of guidance through professionals of, helping us through that journey. So we were always very open with our children. But like I said, for them, it was hard just because they were little. My youngest, his only memories are through our stories. Whereas my older has some of his own. I think for me, one big part that sticks out, and it was something my dad passed 2 years ago suddenly, and my mom and I were talking one day, and I had said to her, I said, the one thing that I said, nobody really explained to me beforehand. I said, and you feel guilty, you feel, why do I feel? And it's a feeling of being completely alone in a crowded room. And you feel guilty because you feel like all these people are here for me. And why do I not really want them here? And as much as, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean they weren't, it took a while to figure out that I felt completely alone because the only person that I wanted in that room wasn't there. And there was a lot of, with my children, because I was my husband's caretaker, my mother-in-law and my mom and other family were huge, kind of help for me in taking care of my kids. But when we were on the other side, it was like I had to get to know them all over again, because I hadn't really been present because I was looking after my husband. And yes, we were in the same house, and yes, I still did things with them, but it was almost like, because we had so much help and so many people around that, and I still did after, but we were going to go back to living with just me and the 2 boys, and it was kind of like, let's get to know each other again. And I find as a caretaker, initially too, you really struggle with, what is my purpose? Because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you looked after someone. So now it's, like I said, I still have my children to look after, but it's different. You just kind of feel like, what is my purpose now? And that's a big struggle. It's been about 1.5 years now, since I kind of started my journey in holistic health. And, it's funny because during my husband's illness, there was little pieces of holistic health that came into our journey that we would try. It wasn't as big an area as it's becoming, and it's wonderful that there's more knowledge and we're learning more. So it's almost like there was little pieces of that, planted in my life throughout the last 11 years, but I wasn't kind of completely there yet. Which then led me to researching more and, taking courses in gut health and stress management to further, initially it was just to further my knowledge. I wasn't really sure I was going to go the coaching side other than my supplement business. I just wanted more knowledge to be able to help people on a deeper level. And then as I went through it, it was funny because I was doing my, the school, we kind of do an exit interview and your final, decide on your final project and what that looks like. And when I spoke to my coach and the owner of our school, and we talked about what I was going to do. And so I had decided that I was going to do kind of a gut health protocol project. And she said, okay, so, is that the direction you're leaning and going? And I said, well, actually, no. And it was funny because I had thought about it, but I hadn't voiced it. And I think because I've always said, if we're constantly in a comfortable place, we're not growing. Because, people hear it all the time, but it really is true. If you're not comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're not growing. So it kind of came out, and I just kind of said, well, I really think I want to help caretakers. And then once I said it, I was terrified because I thought I didn't really think I wanted to say that out loud. I didn't think I was ready to say it out loud, but sometimes things have a way of, so like I said, that's still what I'm developing. But I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about the supplement company that I'm with. They're very much about, they get the mind-body connection and that we have to be healing both. So they really focus on adaptogenic herbs, and that I really haven't found a higher purity and potency. And I guess, that's been a big part of my journey, is also learning that not all things that we put in our body are equal. Yeah. And I've also often explained to people that it's, and that's the thing, there's no way of explaining it. There's times where, I guess it's kind of like when people, will say, oh, it gets easier. And I really don't like that terminology. I don't feel it ever gets easier. I feel we learn to cope better. And for me, that's the thing. There's days that there are waves where it's almost like it feels like it happened yesterday. And then there's other times where there's other times I could go through that whole conversation and not get choked up at all. Not that it's not emotional, but it's just depending on the day as to whether emotion is connected to it. But I feel like for me, grief is a process. It doesn't ever end. Like I said, you learn to cope better. And I'm just somebody, when I talked about the moving on as well in terms of another relationship, or I guess part of that for me is that you truly have to, I'm blessed that I have found someone who doesn't ever feel like they're competing with someone who's not here. And is, part of the stories when we talk about my late husband, to explain to my kids, and he comes to the graveyard with us. And there's even been times where I'm away and he's taken the kids on his own on certain occasions. So I'm truly blessed that way. And blessed that he allows, and I shouldn't say allows isn't the right word, but that he's comfortable enough with himself and comfortable enough with our relationship to understand that my husband will always be part of me, and part of my family, but he is just as much a part of me, and he is just as much a father to my children. I'm thinking both. But like I said, I still haven't completely developed it. I know as a caregiver, it is hard. it's hard to find the time to look after yourself, but I feel like, um, I guess for me, it's sometimes that's where the process will start in trying to help them, give them little things that they can maybe do. I know that during that process, most times we're not eating right. We're certainly not getting enough sleep. Our fight or flight mode is always activated because we're in a constant state of stress, which I know for some people may not completely understand that, but it's that our body can't recognize the difference between if you're running from a fire, um, or if there's a fire and that's your stressor, or if it's your bills at home, or if it's that someone's sick. So your body is having the same response to all of those, um, which is really hard on the body. But I mean, at the same time, you can't completely get rid of that. But my goal would be through the process to just a few little things to help them try to care for themselves during the process, because you kind of start to develop superhuman strength, I think, and in getting through. And then when, unfortunately, if it results in death, you're exhausted. You have caregiver burnout, and there's a whole lot of reparative to do for yourself as well as grief. So I guess my thing throughout the process is to help people just find, like I said, the few things that they might be able to try to do for themselves, just to have some reprieve. I know for me, during the process, I had, for example, a very close friend who was someone for me that was kind of like, it wasn't a huge thing, but she was close enough to me that she could say, when I would say, no, I don't want to, I can't go for coffee right now, she'd say, yes, you can, and you are. You need to just, when it was, I hadn't been out of the house in 3 weeks, other than to get prescription refills. And that was the thing. We had family, so even they were very supportive in that. But not everybody has that, and I know that. But there are, little things that we can do, even if we can't leave our home, to try to look after ourselves at least a little bit, so that you don't have quite as much of a crash. And I guess that's kind of what I found through my journey. And the more I research, it's still that way. And it's not that there's no organizations trying, to help caregivers, but I do find, and I found during the process, a lot of it is about the patient. Which it has to be. They're the ones who are medically sick. But sometimes there's not a whole lot of checking in on the caregiver to say, are you okay? How are you doing? So I know that I really, and not that you want it even to be about you, but I did treasure the people that asked, who were also concerned with and recognized what the caregiver is going through. He and I, and that's the thing, we had to grow up really young, and we discussed everything. And one of the things we had discussed, because I, had kind of said to him, like, is there at any point that you want me to take you to the hospital? And he had just kind of said, unless there's if there's nothing they can do, if there's something that they could actually do for me, then okay. But he said, if not, then no. And for us, it was a big part of, our children wouldn't have been able to be a part of his life for the last several months had he been in hospital. They were just too young. They wouldn't have been able to handle being in a hospital room. So that was why we had made that decision. And we did have palliative care and VON come in, and they would help as well. What used to be, I found funny, was because, between my mom and my mother-in-law, sometimes if I was gone to do something, and VON would come in and they would say to them, well, maybe ask him if he wants to get washed. Anyway, but his automatic response was that I would do it when I got home. And I didn't, I understood that. I can't imagine going through that as the person being sick and having other people. It's hard enough to have your spouse do it, then let someone else. And there was also, times of where he would you know, his frustration would get taken out on me. And I remember my mother-in-law being really upset one day and saying to me, you know, he was hollering at you, or and I said to her, I mean, part of it too was by then he had brain tumors as well. So some of his personality changed, not a great deal. Um, but I had explained to her then, I said, but what you need to understand is, I said, he's losing pieces of his independence day by day, and I'm showing him because I'm doing it. So as he's grieving what he's losing, I'm showing him what he can't do anymore. And you know what? There was days I probably wasn't the friendliest either. When he wanted to try to do some things on his own, and I just wanted to get it done. And it's one of my favorite mantras, and I share it on Facebook a lot. And it's because it's something I have to remind myself of a lot. And it's actually from, I love Rachel Hollis. And I love her quote, which is, somebody else's opinion of you is none of your business. And I love that, just because, and like I said, I have to remind myself that all the time when you're putting yourself out there, through your business, and in life in general. And I think that's where fear steps in a lot of the time, is we get so wrapped up in other people's opinions of us instead of what our own truth is and our own opinion of ourselves. So yeah, it's just something I love, because I love the saying, and